Thank you, Ling Xing, for the invitation to give some insights and about one of my newest or latest research questions about transtopias, and especially for this workshop, Transversal Urbanism. And yeah, I'm happy to get some remarks, some comments, some critiques, and so on. So, therefore, I will start with what I try to do, the urban. I was doing some remarks about the urban, about approaches and discourses, but then I want to go quickly to the migration and integration discourse, more from a European or especially from a more German-driven perspective, moments and concepts of the discourse. And then I want to put another differentiation system, which is questioning the classical, the predefined, like class and so on, differentiations, and then I will come to the outer challenges for social justice, the transtopias, the transversal urbanism. Like the Dean said before, here in Hong Kong, the problems or the ideas about urban and urbanism are quite different from what we can detect in Europe, and I think especially in Germany, because in Germany we have some sort of a strong social welfare state, and maybe you can find this tradition behind my explanations and my different questions I have to ask, or my ideas how to deal with these questions. The urban or urbanity, the production of the urban. The most, or there's some very familiar discourses. I don't want to go too deep to this discourse. It's about newly developed urbanities, habitualized urban areas, where everybody is knowing this sort of climbing and so on, halls and all the consumer temples and so on. And this is question to the right to the city. We heard something about. I think I don't have to go to this discourse because most of the people know the frame of the idea of the right to the city. The crisis of the city. It's coming from the criticism of an urban planning which follows a neoliberal economic global governance architecture. And like Feinstein or Schmidt, Christian Schmidt, said that inclusion is a structural, unequal and explosive system, democratizing cities and their decision-making processes. This is another strand of this right to the city discourse. It's a really widened up. I think, especially in the last years in Europe, it's widened up because a lot of people are dealing with the right to the city, and so it's not so focused. If it was. And exists only if people appropriate it. This is not normally what's normal, but this is normally what we talk about, or what we discuss when we talk about the production of the urban, this tension field. I myself was questioning if I bring the social justice and the urban together, then I follow a little bit the Feinstein and Intermark argument. Social justice where? We have to ask where. We ask for social justice, and we have to ask today. So we have not only a spatial, we can make spatial comparisons, but we also have to follow the path dependencies and the history and where we are, and so on. And formally in progressive city planners focus more on material well-being and equity, for example, equal distribution of housing. If you talk about social justice today, we have a combination of considerations of diversity and democracy, just participation and so on, to foster quality of urban life within the context of global capitalist political economy. And therefore, I like to bring another idea to the question, the production of the urban, or what is the urban, what is urbanity, the transversal identities. Globalization and migration are changing the diversity and the construction of belonging in cities of the 21st century. Politics and urban development we are discussing between creativity, conformity, integration, inclusion, social cohesion, spatial segregation, multiculturalism, interculturality, diversity, transculturality, trans-ethnicity. And all these ideas are coming from this globalization, migration, mobility discourses. And I want to focus myself a little bit more on this discourse about the transversal and transgressive identities and what challenges we can detect out of this discourse for the social justice in cities. Now we are detected that several fields of tensions in between system and the individual, global and local, order, disorder, and so on. And therefore, I will foster to go away or to find other differentiation concepts to identify or to go deeper in this field of tensions to deal with this idea of social justice. The migration and the integration discourse, therefore. I will focus in for the moment of this discourse, but at the end, we can see that this discourse is bringing a lot of ideas which could be fruitful for the whole society, not only the migrant society, in societies. We always talk about we and the others. And some of the moments of the discourse, I did a comprehensive work about the German integration, migration integration discourse. And it's not only a time development, evolution in this line, because today we have all these different concepts together. At the same time, in the same moment, in Germany we are just discussing about migration, how to deal with migration. And so we have the traditional concepts of integration, the conformity, melting pot, cultural pluralism, and structural pluralism. We have the more inspired from the post-colonial thinking, the hybridity concept. We have which we talk today in Germany about, not post-colonial, because this concept fits not so well to the German case. So we developed a new, or people from the roots, from the ground floor, they developed with migration background, they developed a post-migrant perspective. It's a little bit different from the post-colonial perspective. We talk about diversity. Diversity is something, in Germany we have our difficulties with this idea about diversity. I think it's a little bit different from the English or the American context. We talk a little bit about it. It's a more economic concept, but if you go deeper to the discussion about this concept, you can find that's a more cosmopolitical idea. And that's what I'm more interested in, it's the kind of transgressive identities. What we can find, the ideas about to be a transversal person, or transversal being, or transversal society, and the ideas about transnationality, transculturality, and so on. But I try to develop it a little bit more. To the context levels and to the conception of space, I will come on in my further explanations. The traditional models of integration, in a brief idea, conformity is that migrants live according to the rules and practice of their host country. The melting pot, everybody is knowing it, it's the host and integration groups merged with their characteristics. A new homogeneous society with new social patterns and cultural codes are formed. And we have the cultural pluralism, which is very strong, or which we follow very, very deep in Germany. The idea about that migrants can conserve, or they still conserve and practice some of their cultural codes, but adopt the major part of the culture from the host society. And we have the structural pluralism also as another concept, that migrants renounce their cultural codes, but still a strong social concurrence persists in between the members of the migrant group. The structured pluralism is also very strong, developed in Germany from some German sociologists. So these are the traditional idea of integration, of dealing with migration and all the challenges we will have to deal, especially in the urban context or in cities, with the challenges from the migration. In Germany, we had the cultural pluralism and the conformity model, and they merged together they are the strongest in the integration discourse, because I did a discourse analysis on the national integration plan, which was the first integration plan Germany developed. It was the first time in the German history that the state was asking how to deal with migration, because before we had, since after the Second World War, we had the strong in-migration, the guest worker in-migration, and in the last centuries other forms of migration. But officially nobody was dealing with integration, because in the self-perception Germany wasn't an immigration country, so integration was not necessary. This was the state concept, but at the urban level integration works, because the people, politicians on the city level, on the urban level, have to deal with migration. And in this NIP, it's a very traditional, archaic idea of how to deal with migration. And this in the national integration plan is oscillating in between conformity and cultural pluralism in 2007. Today, in 2012, we have the next follow-up plan, and all the wordings, all the ideas are completely changed. More to diversity, more to hybridity, but that's all. Nothing about transgressivity, transversality, transculturality, transnationality. So there's a strong dynamic. But in all this, in this traditional concept, we are talking about we and the others, about nation, about the majority society. This is conformity, melting pot. And both pluralism models are the more ethnically sorted cultural Vielfalt. It's a German word for diversity we are using. This hybridity and diversity, these are both two concepts which are influenced here. I have a perspective horizon. It's the traditional concepts of migration, of integration. They are dealing with a more modern perspective of the world's experiences and so on. It's clearly divided in between we and the others. We are dealing in the cultural pluralism with the idea of the bubbles of culture, which are clearly fixed, with a fixed inside and some fuzzy borders maybe at the outside, but this is a clear modern perspective. And if we come to the hybridity and diversity idea, then we have modern as well as postmodern ideas in between. And therefore these concepts are very, very heterogeneous. And what I sometimes, or the most time, if I do some work with politicians or planners, the problem is that everybody is talking about diversity, but nobody knows what they mean. So it was the same with integration, but at the end, nobody has an idea how to deal with it, or what are the dynamics in between in this concept, or how can we use them for policies, for politics, and so on. And with this modern and postmodern, this concept, which are not clearly modern, because the modern idea, the world was divided in we and the others, everything was fine, everything was all right. And now we have this break up. And in the transversal moment, it's a quite real postmodern idea about we're going back from the group identity, from the predefined identity about class identity and so on, about race, about gender, and we're going down to the individual identity to find out how people construct themselves, how they create their identity in migration societies, in cities with migration and so on, and what kind of social justice they demand. Sorry. I detected in this discourses about the different different concepts. These are the concepts, and the concepts you can depends on which author you are following, but they are quite well developed. But then I tried to go away from all these concepts, and I tried to get the to figure out the moments, the impulses in the migration integration discourse. And what I did, I also used the observer perspective, and I was using the planning horizon. And then I tried to develop the different impulses from a modern perspective, from a postmodern perspective, from a postmodern and a very modern perspective. And it's very funny because all these moments and the impulses they put their dynamic to the migration discourse, and this is quite very easy to understand. The cosmopolitical moment is in the observer perspective, in the world construction, it's a modern one, but in the planning horizon, it's a little bit more postmodern. This means that the planning, targets for planning are not like teleocratic, they are more nomocratic. This means it's more only to put some rules on it and not to define all the different targets. And so you have more this cosmopolitical idea about, okay, now we are recognized that the others are the others, and we are interested about to find out what are the others are. Before in homogenizing collective moment, they have to assimilate to the majority system. Now in the cosmopolitical moment, we are able, or we recognize the others as others, and we are ambitious to find out what the others are, but we are still persist in this me and the other idea, but with a more positive notion. And planning is changing. With the critical moment, it's more what we can discuss in the post-colonial, I said before, but also in the post-migrant perspective. Now, with the postmodern observer, now we are able to deconstruct or reconstruct how the world is constructed from people who have a modern observer position. And therefore, with the critical moment, we can, we are able to put more emphasis on inequality, on ghetto discourses, on parallel societies, and all the stigmatization and so on. But all three moments, the homogenizing collective moment, the cosmopolitical moment, and the critical moment, they don't overcome always the differentiation we and the others. The Turkish and the Germans, the women and the male, and so on. It's always the proletarian or the precarious and the elite, and so on. It's always in between a differentiation between this we and the other. With the transversal moment, it's a quite postmodern moment, and it's I try to develop with the idea of transversal region. It's a philosophical concept. It was developed at the end of the 80s from Welsh. It's a German philosopher. He's a German philosopher. and he's in Germany. He's the philosopher of the postmodernism, and he said, okay, in a postmodern world, we have to decide each moment what kind of differentiation we would want to accept. We are not predefined. We are now able, we have the possibility, we have the ability, and postmodern, because the postmodern is dealing without all this clear differentiation. So we have to, or the people adopt these challenges, and therefore the transversal reason is the impulse which is defining the transversal moment. And what does it mean at the end? At the end is nobody is predefined, and nothing is predefined. So if we accept this idea about transversal moments, then my hypothesis is that this must have some spatial consequences, because then we can't deal with this segregation or with this ghetto discourses. We can't deal with the heterotopias and the utopias idea, because the heterotopias are always counter spaces. They have the function for illusion or for compensation, and it's the counter space based to a utopian idea about the better world. And if we accept that more and more people, because they about their everyday living experiences and their everyday challenges in the postmodern world became transversal, then we have to ask what kind of spatial consequences do we have to deal in the future, or even today. And like I said, up to now, everybody is very interested about this transversal idea, but nobody can imagine what it is or how to deal with it. And so I think this is a big, huge work to figure it out in the next years. I came to this idea because I did some interviews with some younger people, younger students with a migration background, mostly Turkish migration background, because this is the strongest, the biggest community in Germany. And they said to me, everybody always, like in the traditional integration concepts, everybody is try to subordinate me to any category. You are Turkish or you are German, but I'm not Turkish or German. I'm both, and sometimes I'm anybody else, because I have friends, they also, but they are not Turkish and German, they are Arab and French or something like this. And then, this was a common idea in the most of the interviews I did. And then I think, okay, we have to recognize it. If people tell it like this, and if they do a silent revolution of the individual against this main differentiation, this slight event, then we have to recognize it and we have to deal with it. Coming to the value orientation, if we accept the transversal idea and the transgressive identity construction and the transgressive world recognition and so on, then we can't go on with all these predefined categories, differentiations we have. Then we have to find other methods, qualitative as well as quantitative, because everybody knows how the statistics works. They need predefined categories. If not, they can't do their work, they think. And with all the predefined categories, class is one of the most predefined categories. I can't work with this anymore, because for me it's a signifier, empty signifier anymore in today society. So I tried to find other differentiation ideas which fit more to the idea of transversality. And I did some research about value orientations, and I used for this the Offene Gesellschaft und ihre Feinde. This is from Popper, The Open Society and Its Enemies. And he did it, he wrote this work, or it was published, he wrote it during the 40s in the Australian exile, because it was a German philosopher and he was in the exile of Nazi Deutschland. Yeah, he was questioning himself what is an open society, because Nazi Germany was not an open society in the 40s. And he also he also has a lot of criticism against communist and Marxist ideas. And I didn't use his society models he developed in this work, but I found the idea about open and closed as value orientations or as basic orientations to define yourself more open or more closed. And the second one, abstract and concrete, because Popper developed a third, not only the open and the closed society in his work. He did a third society model, open society model, and he talked about the abstract model, but he didn't. It's only about 2 pages in his work. And I developed further the idea of a second dichotomous, the concrete and the abstract. And these are my value orientations, and I did several work or studies about cities, about not people predefined to some class differentiations or to gender differentiations or to race, ethnicity differentiations. So not only to work with this idea about open and closed value orientations as well as abstract and concrete value orientation. And I also developed in this area some statistical model, because you can modeling it, and it was very funny. This is the outcome of a bigger work I did in Barcelona, because I did some years ago my PhD about urban development processes and gentrification and segregation in Barcelona. And it was very funny because, and I compared it to traditional social structure or social area analysis in the city, and the outcomes were not the same but similar. And I discussed these outcomes with people in Barcelona, and they were very astonished because they said, that's very interesting how you can divide or how you can explain the spatial differentiation inside the city. And I think it's not necessary to go all to the deep, but here you can see the main dichotomies, concrete and abstract, and closed and open, and this more basic factors like persistent, transistent, suburban, urban in the urban context. And then you can get these clusters of value orientations. These are the group of value orientations, and then you can find out how these are the most abstract group, and these are the most concrete group. And they love spontaneous and abstract artists, and all the most architects and arts scientists are part of this group, because they are the people they are dealing with the abstract idea of society in quite different manners, but they are really and they behave in the urban context. They looking for their home or their flat in these areas where they can live abstract and spontaneous. So, coming to the end, Transtopias and Transversal Urbanism, urbanity, also challenges for social justice. What do we have? Yeah, 2 slides. What do we have to do? Or what do I have to do? Because this is my to-do list for the next, I don't know, maybe if I go back to retirement or something like this. But these are only some ideas and some collection. And in the next years, and I discussed some of these ideas and some of these question, demands, challenges with people from other disciplines. And it's quite interesting because they understand what I mean or what I like to do, and sometimes they have a certain idea, but they found it at the end a little bit stupid or too silly or too abstract to deal with this in a more profound way. If we accept the postmodern society or postmodern cities, and we accept the value orientations as a form of identity, and to deal with postmodern worlds today, then I don't want to skip the class idea, because we have to use it, because we also have to ask about class injustice, which is coming from class differentiation, or which is coming from migration background and so on, because these are sometimes really socioeconomic factors. But I think we have to do both, value orientation and class, because if we have, this is the German idea, but I think it's also in the English context, that the postmodern don't overcome the modern, so the modern idea, it's part, the postmodern is part of the modern idea, so we do the traditional differentiation also. But I think edit with value orientations or similar concept and develop more, theoretically as well as methodologically. If we accept that we are more transversal, that we are more abstract, then we have to think about improvisation in the urban discourse. And this is a discourse I always have with planner and architects. We have to develop something like abstract planning. Formerly I called it open planning, but today I call it abstract planning because it's something which is dealing together with the improvisation idea. Urban interventions, participation as autonomous politics. We have the crowdsourcing gray spaces, and I think we have to go further more in this. In these spaces, governance gaps, and we have to develop the idea of urban interventions for abstract planning and to develop the improvisation idea about urban planning. And this is from the monolingual habitus. I like it because I was discussing with a colleague from the pedagogics, and she explained me, because I was asking about injustice from children with migration background in the school world or in the education world. And we were discussing it. And she said, okay, the monolingual habitus is something which in Germany is very strong, because the teachers are standing in front and they have only that German idea how to deal with the world, how to recognize the world and so on. But the people, the youngsters in front of them, they have a dual lingual habitus. It's not about the ability to speak German, it's about the world construction in the everyday life. And if we accept that we have to give up our monolingual habitus idea, then maybe some of this integration, migration, and to deal with the aspects and the challenges of migration would be more easier. This will lead me to another idea about changing the subjectivity and the objectivity, or changing the position of object and subject, because I had a discussion with somebody from the arts discipline, and we were discussing about this monolingual habitus in German schools. And she said, this is very funny because the teacher, they have the idea that the students or the pupils, they have to follow them. But if she is always putting the active side to the students and the pupils, then she puts herself in the object position. She doesn't move anymore. So we have to observe more the object and the subject positions in this idea about transtopias and transversal. Also memorable in post-migrants, I mentioned before. The post-migrants in Germany this movement, they are asking for for memory, for their own memory, and they asking for the right to their own memory. It's not the memory of the dominant society, and it's not the memory of their fathers or mothers or grandfathers, which have active migration background, because they are second or third generation. And they said, we have to find other everyday construction and everyday challenges. So we are the post-migrants, and we have to deal with this. And at last, Hutus or the revolution divorced its children. This is something from movement to organization and institutionalism. We have similar discourses in other right to the city discourses as well. But the migrant self-organizations, they try to implement diversity, or they demand for implementation of diversity. But at the end, what is coming out is multiculturalism, because the political and the planning area is not able to deal with diversity or with transgressive ideas, because they also have to have the idea organizations and institutionalism has to follow the idea of integration of a dominant society and so on. So we have to foster the consciousness building in the political area. Social justice and multi-locality. Everybody is talking about transnationality since I don't know, 30 years or something like this. In Germany, we start to talk about multi-locality because transnationality is a concept which sometimes neglect the local idea, and maybe then it's something. What you said before, Stefan, is the scaling, scale jumping. And then at the end, if we talk about transversal versality and transversal identity, then we have to ask the idea of the nation state. We have to question it. With multi-locality, with transnationality, one day, we have to answer the questions about borders in the EU. We start asking questions: do we need borders, or how do we deal with borders? Thank you very much.
All right, we have time for one, maybe two questions while you're getting set up. Yeah. So, you have a question?
You mentioned about the modern. How about you treat it modern?
Sorry?
How we treat the modern, because your frame is modern. I mean, typical for European development. How about this part of the world? Some are very much pre-modern. How with the typical modern?
No, modern and postmodern, I developed it more from the observer position, not from all these other categories. It's more this, then everything is clear?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, okay.
How about you?
Yeah, okay. The modern observer position is the position of the modern observer is everything is real. What we can see is real. It is existing like this. And the postmodern observer position is constructing the observer.
One more, and then if you want to get set up while we're doing this, would be great.
Well, I'm just wondering, I'm confused about some of your, the mix between a discursive analysis and the world in which it exists. Like this kind of transversal moment you're talking about seems to be kind of a kind of utopic erasure of class, race, gender distinctions.
No,
it's an
erasure, but
who does that exactly privilege, and that, like, discursively, who speaks this language and who does it benefit?
The language about transversality or something.
And post-migrant as well. Do people feel that they're over their migration? I mean,
no, they are not. They are not over their migration, but they are not willing to be a migrant. And we have a very strong.
But they are migrants.
No, that's a problem. You say they are migrants,
well,
but Their self-conception is, no, we are not migrants, because migrant is, if we follow up the German migrant discourse, the official, on the more collective level, on the individual level, you can find everything. Then the migrant is a stigmatized version of a member of the society in Germany. Yeah.
Discursive.
Yeah.
That's what you're talking about, the level of discourse.
I think these will be great topics to pick up at tea and over lunch and things like that. So thank you very much, Christina. And